Batman's real identity is Bruce Wayne, and if that came as a shock to you, then you'll also be surprised to learn that he is a billionaire, meaning that he has a never-ending supply of Bat-themed toys. But what if one night Bruce decided to bet it all on black and lost all of his family's fortune? Today we'll attempt to beat Batman Arkham Knight without using any gadgets, or at least limit their use whenever possible. So what if Batman Arkham Knight was poor? We began our story as a police officer who was trying to enjoy his waffles and bacon dinner, when a concerned citizen interrupted it by reporting a rebellious teenager vaping on the premises. My shift had ended 10 seconds ago, so it was out of my hands, but things changed when the citizen mentioned the flavor of the vape: blueberry banana. Mixing both of those flavors into one was already a capital crime, so I confronted the youngster only to be thrown into a dreadful nightmare that was triggered by the repulsive smell. Sadly, so did everybody else around me, which turned the cozy diner into Minecraft spawn on 2B2T. Luckily, the mastermind behind the attack revealed both himself and the devious plan he had. Scarecrow, or Sackface as he is colloquially known, desired to gain monopoly over the vaping industry. To achieve that, he would forcefully give free samples of blueberry banana to every inhabitant of Gotham. Hearing his terrorist manifesto, the entire city was evacuated, with the only ones remaining being a quarter of the police force, all the bad boys, and I, the orphan billionaire who lost all his billions one night prior. Saddened by my loss and infuriated by Sackface's actions, I went to the police commissioner to get a grip on the situation. While I make my way there, let me quickly explain the rules of this challenge. Originally, all of Batman's gadgets were off limits, but playing through the game revealed different sections where I would either get softlock or I couldn't advance until I used a certain tool. So instead, I will use gadgets only when it's required for story progression. But what is considered a gadget? Everything inside the gadgets wheel, like batarangs, the grapple gun, the smoke grenade, and so on. However, to make the game manageable, the batsuit itself doesn't count as a gadget, meaning that I can use the cape to glide and access particular spots without relying on the grapple gun. With all the rules out of the way, Jim told me that the situation was worse than we could have ever imagined, but his unrequested trauma dump was disrupted by an officer in distress, so I glided to his location, saved him from the bullies, and almost got hit by a 16-year-old taking his first driving lesson. Seeing that cars were a new mechanic of this game, I evened the odds by requesting my very own Batmobile, only to be given a literal tank instead. Delighted by the change of plans, I rushed after the 16-year-old to give him a ticket for driving too slowly. Now that the Batmobile has been introduced, there are some rules about its usage we need to address. Arkham Knight is heavily riddled with scenarios where the Batmobile must be used, otherwise the story cannot progress. Taking this into account, I will only keep track of the car's special abilities, as well as every time I have to call it to my location. After gently pulling the young driver over, I extorted him for Scarecrow's location and his blueberry banana recipe. With two problems on my hands, I called Jim's daughter to find a cure for the foul vape flavor, while I would take my chances and confront Sackface one-on-one. But I was immediately met with a problem that plagued the entire city. The only available entrance was on the roof, because the elevator was busted. Due to the lack of stairs and elevator mechanics, Gotham citizens are forced to rely on their grapple guns or their parkour abilities to enter different buildings. The same applied to me, so I used the conveniently placed climbable objects near his safe house to enter from the roof and give his employees some much needed rest. Even so, my triumphs were crushed when I saw an imprisoned half-naked plant lady instead of Scarecrow. His elusive tactics fooled me once more, but I couldn't let this get to me, so I took Ivy as my own prisoner, but not before being thrown out of a window by her pet plants. As Ivy and I made our way downstairs, we were faced with a squadron of 16-year-olds who had orders for our capture. I didn't take them seriously the first time, but they showed me that they meant business. With that in mind, on my second attempt I called upon my tank to dispose of the young soldiers first, then clear the area of the remote-controlled tanks that ambushed us. With Ivy secured in the passenger seat, the game insisted on showing me what the Batmobile was capable of by using a missile barrage inside the simulation. Then I destroyed a few more enemy tanks before going to the police precinct to drop Ivy off in her new cell. Here I had to call the Batmobile twice, once to open the door, then a second time to let Ivy out of the car. After she embraced her new home, I recovered the lost gadget the game would force onto me later in the story. Then Jim and Cash explained the available side quests, but I decided that stopping the city from being engulfed in blueberry banana vapors was more pressing. Next on my list was finding the manufacturing place for Scarecrow's vape flavor, which meant that I had to visit Barbara inside the clock tower. As with all elevators throughout the city, the clock towers was also busted, so I used some creative parkour assisted by gliding until having no choice but to use the grapple gun for the first time in this challenge. Inside, Barbara suggested that the only logical place for manufacturing this kind of substance was Ace Chemicals, but someone once told me to never trust redheads. So I rejected her opinion and decided to use the 2 radio antennas from the city to find the substance myself. But these antennas needed calibration in order to accurately search for it, meaning that I had to personally go to each one and calibrate them. I made my way to the movie studios first, but when I tried turning the antenna on, it broke the generator. I panicked and called Lucius for customer support, but the solution he gave me implied getting the car onto the roof and powering the antenna myself. However, he was kind enough to send an upgrade for the Batmobile, one that allowed me to winch myself on the roof to carry out his plan. With one antenna down, another remained, so I glided to the second one, where I found a few young soldiers holding a police officer hostage. My bat instincts kicked in and forced me to save the officer before messing with the antenna. But my good intentions came at a cost, as I was forced to throw a batarang and use the grapple gun once more in order to cause a distraction and separate the group. After taking out the 2 wandering teenagers, Lucius sent me a gift that consisted in an upgraded suit, which allowed me to take the remaining soldiers without breaking the sweat. However, this will be the only time I will use the fear takedown mechanic, as there was no way of progressing otherwise. I then uncuffed the officer, calibrated the second antenna, and, to my surprise, confirmed Barbara's theory and determined that the blueberry banana mix was indeed being manufactured at Ace Chemicals. I apologized to Barbara and promised her that I would trust all redheads from now on. Then I ran through the city, slowly making my way onto the bridge that led to the facility. There I met with Jimbo, who was eager to apprehend Sackface and stop his vile vape flavor from being manufactured. But that had to wait, as a mysterious individual crashed both our party and the bridge connecting to the facility. Outraged by his actions, my mood only got worse when I noticed him wearing a digital Batman costume. There could only be one Batman, so we became mortal enemies right then and there. However, he knew better than to charge me head on and fled the scene, forcing me to grapple up onto the outskirts of the facility and scout the place first before taking control of the entire front yard by taking out all the militia and the unmanned tanks. Aside from finding Scarecrow and his illegal mix, I also had to find the factory's missing crew. So I lowered the ramp for my car, allowing me to check the backyard where more tanks were waiting for me. I easily cleared it, then beat some guys in order to go inside the facility, where I found not 1, not 2, but 3 of the missing workers. However, they had all passed away due to inhaling the infectious vapors released from the manufacturing of Scarecrow's mix. I couldn't risk any more people dying in such a way, so I pushed on, using both my car and some explosive gel to clear my path, after finally finding a member of the crew that was still breathing. Unfortunately, he was being held by another group of teenage soldiers, so I introduced them to my fists, then kindly escorted the worker outside for some much needed fresh air. Despite our victory, my copycat ambushed me again with a helicopter and more tanks, but I quickly decommissioned all of them before continuing my search for the last survivor. He was being held inside a building on the outer side of the facility, but with no easy way of going in, I took down a wall, knocked everybody out with my car's rubber bullets, then hurried to uncuff the crew member. But as I did so, I felt a disturbance in the force that was followed by more soldiers showing up, along with my copycat, whose name we learned to be the Arkham Knight. He started exposing all of my suit's weak spots, but I couldn't shut him up personally, as I feared that the worker would get shot down first. Luckily, everybody had their backs turned on the car, so I sneakily used more rubber bullets that enabled me to properly finish the fight and get the last survivor to safety. However, the Arkham Knight fled the scene once more, meaning that I had to be patient until we met again. With everybody back to safety, I went back inside the facility to finally search for Scarecrow. But confused as to what to do, I used my newly found trust in red-headed people and asked Barbara for clues. She promptly advised me to destroy the wall in front of me. So I did, used the ramp again, then drove inside the tunnel until fighting 2 tanks guarding it. I took care of them, but as I advanced, I found a wall that I had to grapple up on. Beyond the wall, a couple of soldiers and the sentry gun were guarding the next bit of the tunnel, so I naturally took everybody out, opened the doors for my car, then I was met with yet another wall. I grappled up again, but to my surprise, I stumbled up on the VIP bar of the facility, where all the soldiers who'd ended their shifts were hanging out. I decided to poop their party and show them some exotic dance moves before opening another door for the Batmobile. However, a third and final wall was waiting for me, but in order to go beyond this one, I had to use the seat eject feature on my car. Being closer to apprehending Sackface, I noticed him concocting his devious mix inside the middle room of the mixing section. There were personnel everywhere, where some were guarding the place while others were fueling the mixing station with both bananas and blueberries. Seeing the intricate process developing in front of my eyes, I decided to undermine it by taking out all the soldiers first, then having a respectful conversation with Scarecrow about the health hazards of vaping. However, I was at a loss for words when he confessed that his militia had captured Barbara in order to test their marketing campaign on her. I immediately called to warn her about the danger, but I was too late in both warning Barbara and catching Scarecrow. With her missing and Sackface evading me again, I desperately tried decreasing the explosion he had started by gently and carefully adding melon lemonade as a neutralizing agent. But despite all of Alfred's requests of me leaving the place, I was almost done with negating the entire explosion when a familiar face eagerly tried telling me a joke. The shock of seeing Joker's face made me pass out and relive a flashback, but from Jimbo's eyes instead of mine. We were brought back to the moment the commissioner decided to crash Batman's place unannounced, where he found 4 different people impersonating the Joker. Taken aback by Joker's popularity in the cosplaying niche, Jimbo tried leaving the movie studios, but Batman stopped him at the door to ask about a possible career in law enforcement. Shocked by his honesty, the commissioner promised that he'd ask around, which made the Dark Knight spiral into a never-ending monologue about justice. After the 5-minute nap, Joker's stinky breath woke me up and reminded me that being a cop required carrying a gun, to which I was allergic, prompting me to stick to being a vigilante. However, a moment of confusion ensued as I found myself stuck inside the mixing chamber, along with a jammed door and the hallucination of my past nemesis. But I quickly overcame the confusion as I remembered that my car had the power of taking down literal walls, which came in handy and allowed me to escape the explosion from the facility. With one more small business destroyed at the expense of justice, I asked Gordon to meet me at the police station, but things escalated when he heard of his daughter being kidnapped. He immediately set out to find her before I offered him the keys to the Batmobile in hopes of calming him down. However, his stubbornness declined my proposal, forcing me to guard his police cruiser from potential threats. Sadly, 2 potential threats materialized themselves next to us, and after taking them out, I could finally convince Jim to hop into the passenger seat of my tank. Knowing that he was now safe, I left him in the middle of the road to search for an alternative route to the clock tower, which was Barbara's last known location. But all I could find were a bunch of teenage soldiers guarding the tower and a third of the Arkham Knight's tank supply in the parking lot. I couldn't let the soldiers hear Jim and I talk about our problems, so I silently took them out along with the tanks outside, freeing the front door for Jimbo. I then grappled up to enter the place where I found Barbara calmly snooping inside my journal. However, things took a dark turn when the man living inside my head showed up to cripple poor Barbara. I tried shaking the gruesome memory off, but my sadness was amplified at the sight of Jim using the elevator. Apparently, elevators in Gotham City don't allow bats inside, which made me feel like more of a loser than I already was. Jim confessed his confusion about his daughter not evacuating the city, compelling me to tell the truth about her helping me behind his back. Disappointed in my actions, he gave me some fatherly discipline before showing off his elevator privileges and going after Barbara on his own. I was sad to see Jimbo leave, but I used the quiet time to my advantage and determined that the Arkham Knight was the only one responsible. Luckily, his car had unique tires fitted on, so I used the scanner inside the Batmobile to see where he took my precious intern. As I was searching for my copycat, one of his helicopters dropped a suspicious device that stopped me dead in my tracks. It looked to be some sort of bomb, but I didn't have time to roleplay as a counter-terrorist and defuse it, so I tried moving on, only to be forced by the game to disarm it. Seeing me take the bait, the Arkham Knight sent more tanks on my location, hoping to catch me unprepared and finish the job. However, I disappointed him once more, destroying all of the tanks, then the bomb, allowing me to resume my search for his whereabouts on the neighboring island. I reached the bridge connecting to the next location, but I had to stop yet again because Alfred couldn't lower it, as the young soldiers revoked my access to Gotham's infrastructure while I was on a bathroom break. The game pitied me and automatically relocated me on top of the bridge, instructing me to go and teach the youngsters a lesson in never messing with the poor man. I took advantage of the newly gained high ground and followed the elevated subway railings to the center of the island, where I carefully disposed of the soldiers and sent them back to school. I gave Alfred back his admin privileges before being presented with another side quest inside the main quest line. Apparently, my fiancée got herself kidnapped by a green man who questions everything, and I had to save her from being audited about her tax payments. If I had a nickel for every time a friend was captured on the same night, I'd have 2, which is weird that it happened twice. I got there, but seeing her all tied up made me furious, enough so that I destroyed all the green minions that Riddle Man prepared for my welcome. With things slowly calming down, I tried negotiating with the talking question mark, without realizing that my fortune was gone. He offered another way of saving my fiancé, one that involved running all of his errands for the next 2 weeks, but I was no delivery boy, so I promised Selina that I'd be back once I made sure that the city was safe from Scarecrow's threat, but in reality she needed a break from my credit cards and spare me from her spending habits. With things somewhat under control, I had to find a way of crossing the bridge and getting the Batmobile on the new island in order to continue the search for Barbara. Luckily, an abandoned parking lot allowed me to parkour my way onto a tall enough building and glide to the car from there. Once I got back to the car and lowered the bridge, I discontinued the tanks guarding it and scanned my way to Barbara's location. Unfortunately, I'd picked up a tail along the way and had to sacrifice my Batmobile for the tanks to forget about me. After the area had cleared itself, I found what remained of the car Barbara was kidnapped in. I used my true detective knowledge to inspect the crash site and determine that she had caused it herself in order to give me an encrypted USB drive that contained classified Wayne information such as Victoria's secret, Batman's identity, and the Arkham Knight's location. Having no idea how to turn on a computer, let alone decrypt a USB drive, I called Lucius to do it for me. He was more than happy to help, so I sneaked my way through the city, then grappled up 4 times before I met Lucius and heard the devastating news that Victoria's secret and Batman's identity were missing from the drive. However, he managed to pinpoint my copycat's location to the metro tunnels under the island. I was eager to end this masquerade as soon as possible, but before I could leave, Lucius gave me an upgrade for my car as a consoling gift. I politely smiled and accepted it, knowing deep inside that it was useless and I'd never get to use it. Back on the streets of Gotham, I tried reaching the entrance to the tunnels, but it was guarded by more tanks that were eagerly waiting to shred me to pieces. I had to resort to using my car again to clear the area and continue my search for Barbara. Disappointingly, a giant metal wall stopped me again from carrying on. That was until I looked up and found a giant vent that could lead me inside. I took it out with my car, grappled up, then had a quick chat with both the real Robin and the fictional version of Joker before crawling through some vents that led me to a dead end. After trying multiple attempts of jumping over the spinning blades, I gave in and used a batarang to preemptively open the doors, then used my line launcher twice to advance to the next area where I had to do the same. But I didn't want to rely on my gadgets without finding another path first, so I started messing around with the jumping and gliding mechanics when I found that this room could be traversed without the line launcher. Delighted by my discovery, I used a remote-controlled batarang to open the next gates, then carefully glided my way above the spinning blades and onto the small corridor I had just opened. Exploring the corridor revealed that I had successfully infiltrated the blocked part of the tunnel, where another quarter of the Arkham Knight's army was hanging out. I grappled my way around the tunnel, then crawled towards the control room when the copycat himself ambushed me using one of my own spells against me. He knocked me down, gave me a boring monologue and internal bleeding before calling all the youngsters in the tunnel to finish the job for him. Being an old man, I struggled a bit, but after taking everybody out, I called in the Batmobile to deal with the remaining tanks. With the area secure, I opened the tunnel's exit door, which immediately plunged me into chasing the Arkham Knight, who tried to flee in his sleek 4x4. Being a curious bat, I tried chasing him on foot, which unfortunately didn't work. So, on my second attempt, I used the Batmobile to crash his car, only to find a 16-year-old using a voice modulator instead of my copycat behind the wheel. Seeing the youngster mocking me for being a fool, I used the disciplinary techniques my father taught me, which made him confess that a little penguin was somehow involved. I called Alfred to arrange a meeting with my first son, but before I could meet Richard, I had to accept Lucius's gift for the Batmobile. After installing the upgrade and disabling more enemy tanks, I went back to the trustworthy parking lot, glided from a nearby building, and finally met with my son, who had crucial information about the polar bird I was investigating. Richard told me that Cobblepot was smuggling illegal gym equipment into Gotham, and if I wanted to meet the bird, I had to follow one of his trucks back to his hideout. He also gifted me a gun, which I was forced to use to show him that I liked it. I then jumped down to give Penguin's workers a break and politely convinced the truck driver to show me where the hideout was. Luckily, the game allowed me to follow the truck on foot, and after a few minutes the driver showed me where Penguin was hiding. Weirdly enough, it was right next to the parking lot from earlier, meaning that I had run across the city for nothing. However, I couldn't let the unnecessary cardio session distract me, so I cleared out the roof from Penguin's little helpers before heading inside, where I found him and his minions bonding over a game of charades. His workers were desperately trying to guess Penguin's character, until one of them shouted Batman, which startled and caused me to attack the little man from behind. His helpers tried explaining the situation, but I panicked and threw Penguin on top of them, trying to flee the scene. Sadly, they pinned me down and threatened to break my wings until Richard showed up and helped me pacify everyone who hadn't left the party. After thanking him by politely asking to be left alone, I was forced to use more explosive gel to destroy Penguin's savings account instead of taking the money and buying some gadgets for myself. During my brief conversation with the little bird, he confessed that there was something fishy about the 2 huge blimps that had illegally entered Gotham's airspace. I left his hideout to investigate, but outside I was met by more teenagers who were smart enough to use remote-controlled machine guns to trap me. Seeing myself in another predicament, I tried hiding behind the wall, but the machine guns had reality-bending bullets that shredded me through it. After some exploring, my only solution was grappling up to avoid the bullets, then using the Batmobile to go to the roof of the parking lot and take out the soldiers from behind. Going from one stressful situation to another had me drained very quickly, and I needed a break to recharge. However, Alfred called me with intel on the owner of the blimps and promised to make me my favorite meal after I took down Scarecrow. My desire for pineapple pizza recharged my batteries to 110%, allowing me to make my way to the blimps. As I was getting closer, later, I noticed that the blimps were 800 feet into the air and I was still on the ground. With no other way of gaining altitude, I grappled up 3 times before finding a control tower guarding one of the blimps. I couldn't get on board without triggering the sentry guns from the tower, so I took out its personnel before using explosive gel again to destroy the sentries. I was ready to go when Alfred called to warn me about the advanced security systems on board, which made me ask Lucius for another favor and make me a hacking device. Thankfully, he'd already read my mind and prepared it for pickup. Sadly, the pickup location was on top of Wayne Plaza, the tallest building in Gotham. So, to save grapple gun uses, I glided towards the plaza, used the grapple gun 3 more times, and finally got my hands onto the hacking device. After taking it, I noticed that the blimps were below me, so I glided to the closest one before regretting my decision of picking up the hacking device, as now I had to actually use it. I unlocked the door, hacked the drone and its users, then opened the doors to the lobby, where the Arkham Knight and Sackface gave a killer presentation on the benefits of their blueberry banana mix. Seeing the result of their actions urged me to step up my game and stop them before more people would get hurt tasting the blueberry banana flavor. So I took control over the blimp's stability feature, then made my way through the ship before finding the owner in the middle of a speech. The attendees were giving him feedback, but they were too aggressive, so I stepped in and showed them how to properly do it. After teaching my lessons, I had a word with Simon, who decided to prank me by suddenly transforming into Joker. The prank was not funny, but after coming to my senses, I realized that the prank was even more elaborate than I'd thought, as a couple of soldiers took Simon hostage over to the other airship. Afraid that I might go there directly, Alfred warned me about the wall-mounted turrets on the side of the other blimp. Luckily, my blimp also had them, so I made my way to the stern of the ship, using my remote hacking device along the way to clear a path and open a door, and grapple up inside the vent that led to the computer controlling the turrets. But what I found was more than what I'd asked for, as the entire room was crawling with militia. I took a step back to work out my game plan, then proceeded to slowly give everyone a break, using the floor grades to my advantage. Once the room was cleared, I invaded Simon's MacBook to respectfully borrow his fingerprints, as I needed them to control the defense system. I used my suit's version of the meta glasses to do so, then finally secured my way onto the next airship by leaving it turretless. I retraced my step to the cargo room, where I found another group of young soldiers who were hoping to prove that they were better than all the previous ones I had already defeated. However, they didn't stand a chance, and after a brief chat with Lucius, followed by a quick hack that opened the side doors, I glided straight to the second airship, where another group of soldiers were waiting to be relieved of their duties. After the inevitable fight, I looked for ways of getting to Scarecrow, but the only path available involved destroying a concrete wall, rocking the airship back and forth to break a glass wall, then impersonating Simon to open a door that led to the containment facility. Weirdly enough, Simon was also there, but he was being locked in a cage by a 16-year-old who ate too many vitamin gummies. With another room filled with militia, I took them out one by one, leaving the big one for last before getting a chance of asking Simon about Sackface. But when I mentioned Scarecrow's name, his PTSD was triggered as he shook uncontrollably and babbled about candy in a headless pumpkin. A couple of seconds later, Simon fell into a deep sleep, allowing me to keep looking and finally finding Sackface in the nearby room. But something was not adding up, as there were now 2 of them. I slowly approached the wrong one, which enabled the real Scarecrow to hit me with more blueberry banana vapors that made me go insane and give Joker admin privileges to my body. Amazed at how much I bench pressed, used all of my strength to overpower Sackface and make him apologize for his crimes. But despite all of Joker's enticement to finish it then and there, I knew that we were only 50% done with the story, so I had to let Sackface go for the sake of the game. However, I instantly regretted that decision when I saw him actually getting away, taking a highly engineered vapor dispersing device with him. Not even 2 seconds after getting away, Sackface called with Barbara's location, threatening to expose her to more of the devious mix if I hadn't shown up in time. I never responded well to threats, so I took my time before finally going to his original hideout, where Barbara was having a well-deserved nap. I woke her up to convince her to leave, but she insisted that blueberry banana was now her favorite vape flavor and wanted to help on improving it further. I was crushed when I heard that, but things only got worse when Joker gave Barbara an imaginary gun that she then used against me, before finding a permanent solution to her temporary problem. With Barbara momentarily out of the equation, I had to look for another redhead assistant when I remembered that Ivy was still locked up at GCPD. I wasted no time and went there, using the Batmobile to open the front door before kindly asking her to put some clothes on and become my helper. Sadly, she refused my first request, but agreed on helping, saying that she knew a way of erasing the blueberry banana mix for good. She insisted on keeping it a secret though, telling me only that we needed to go to the botanical gardens. I agreed to play her games, but when I tried to exit the precinct, Cash warned me that the Arkham Knight's new generation of tanks was waiting to catch me outside. I couldn't risk losing another redhead assistant, so I made Ivy wait until I scanned the Cobra tank for weaknesses, then got rid of it by stabbing it in the back. This made my copycat more furious than usual, prompting him to send more of these tanks onto the neighboring islands. However, I couldn't afford to think about that, as I had to go to the gardens but people kept interrupting me, such as Lucius, who wanted to gift me another upgrade for the Batmobile. I couldn't refuse him this time either, so I went to the clock tower, got the upgrade, then was devastated to find that I had to use the car again to take out the Cobra tanks near the gardens. After clearing the second island from the snakes, I ran straight to the garden, where Ivy introduced me to one of her oldest relatives. Thankfully, the giant plant agreed on helping us, but she couldn't do it alone, so she asked me to wake up all of her sleeping sisters, in hopes of producing enough neutralizing agent to stop the wretched mix. Seeing that I needed an upgrade that would actually come in handy, I asked Lucius to give the Batmobile an advanced scanner, which was waiting for me at Wayne Tower. But the scanner wasn't the only thing expecting my arrival, as I got ambushed yet again by my copycat's army of drones. Luckily, they were still no match for my tank, so I quickly got the upgrade installed and proceeded to search the entire city for the root of the problem. Once I found it, I woke the plant up, only for the young militia to try and take it out with unregistered rocket launchers. Seeing that they had no permits for the RPGs, I confiscated all of their firepower, which allowed the plants to evolve and harden their skin. With a contingency plan ready for a possible release of the blueberry banana mix onto the city, I had enough for one night and decided to head home for a nap. However, Alfred reminded me that losers become losers only when they quit, so I pulled myself together and headed back to the movie studios. I was hoping to clear the third island from militia presence and allow my plane to scan for the device Sackface had previously stolen. Apparently, the cloudburst was made for dispersing substances found in vapor state, and knowing that he still had his hands on the terrible flavor mix, I had to stop him before he decided to cover the entire city with it. Something that was easier said than done, as my short trip to the studios revealed that the third island was controlled by watchtowers and flying drones. Knowing that I had to go there but the bridges were still up, I took a break from running and decided to glide from the studios instead, which thankfully allowed me to land on one of the flying drones and take a look at its programming. This gave me the ability to temporarily blind them, which I had to use in order to make my way to one of the towers and destroy it. With one tower down, I proceeded to the next, but this one was guarded by both young soldiers and sentry guns. The soldiers were not a problem, but in order to get to the terminal and destroy it, I had to blind one of the sentry guns before using more explosive gel to knock the second tower down. Now that the auxiliary towers were out of the picture, I glided to the main one, where I was met by more 16-year-olds who were trying to make money for brand new PS5s. I resisted the urge to rid them of their honest jobs, but stopping Sackface was more important, so I shattered their dreams, then went into the main control room to decommission the final tower. Seeing that this one was equipped with a missile launcher, I had to use the Batmobile to destroy it, but before I could do so, I had to clear the area and destroy more of the serpentine tanks. After removing all the snakes, my nemesis suddenly busted into the control room, frantically searching for my whereabouts. Fortunately, I'd smelled his cheap mask 10 minutes ago, which gave me enough time to hide inside the vents above. I was patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike, when I accidentally farted and gave away my location. I panicked and knocked out the first guy I saw, before going toe-to-toe with the copycat himself. He was weaker than before, but he somehow still managed to slip away, leaving me with more soldiers to practice my martial arts on. 5 seconds later, everybody was sleeping on the ground, which allowed me to use the Batmobile in destroying the missile launcher, marking the final tower as decommissioned. With the island's airspace cleared, I headed to the clock tower to begin the search for the cloudburst device, when the cheap version of Joker from the 1900s interrupted my work to warn me that the movie studios were being attacked by a grieving blonde. I was willing to let her get away with it, simply because I couldn't waste more time dealing with main story side quests, but everything changed when she started roasting my choice of clothes. So I stopped all the important work I was doing to head over to the studios and teach the wannabe nurse some manners. When I got there, I was surprised to see a group of thugs guarding the main entrance, meaning that Harley was more organized than I previously thought. However, they were pretty useless, as I easily took them out, but I was dumbstruck again when I tried opening the door and found that the nurse removed my admin credentials from the system. Fortunately, I remembered about the 11 Labs voice changer tool from my inventory that allowed me to borrow Harley's voice and use it for my own endeavors. Unfortunately, this meant having to use another gadget if I wanted to teach her a lesson. So I did, but she somehow knew what I was up to, judging from the better armed thugs she sent to the front door. With the only available entrance being more secure than the inmates from Arkham, I decided to deal with the roaming punks first, before coming with a pertinent plan on disabling both sentry guns without being shot down by the armed thugs. I tried different approaches, but the one that proved successful involved sacrificing a bit of my health to scare the boys and force them to search for me, then use the shadows to take them out one by one, before finally entering the studios and using the only working elevator in the entire city. After the short but sweet ride where Joker reminded me of my past mistakes, I was delighted to find Robin trying to make a name for himself by stopping another group of thugs from messing with our computers. Sadly, after watching him for a bit, I determined that he wasn't ready for a promotion, so I used Harley's voice to open the door, then showed my avian sidekick how to handle a stressful situation. Luckily for him, he proved himself after he successfully interrogated one of the hired clowns and found Harley's real motives. She wanted to start a band but needed 3 3 more artists to fulfill her dream. So she convinced 3 of the Joker cosplayers to hide in different rooms of the building, where they had to wait for Harley to print out each individual contract for their upcoming tour. Suspiciously enough, the older Joker copycat was left behind, but it made sense at the time as his artistic inclination was non-existent. Feeling sorry for him, I decided to recruit him on my team and instructed the outcast to lock the doors until me and Robin burned down all the contracts. With 3 different careers to ruin, the Bird and I went straight to the feminine version of the Joker, as she had the biggest potential for becoming a top 100 solo artist. After removing the lock from the front door, another 16-year-old full of vitamins showed up to make our lives 1% more difficult. I couldn't face him head on, so I sneaked around, allowing Robin and I to take him down as a team. After walking around for a bit, we found Christina giving a small display of her new song, but the feedback was not great, which inspired the artist to try harder next time. From what we'd witnessed, I determined that she was still nervous to sing around unfamiliar faces, so I took care of our bodyguards on my own in spite of Robin's demands of helping. Then we entered her private office, only for Robin to be attacked by Christina in a desperate act to keep her musical career alive. Weirdly enough, the boy wonder didn't mind the physical contact, as he stood there for quite some time, allowing the woman to give him a facelift. After finally telling her she's never going to be a real artist, Robin carried her outside while I was struck trying to get past another brute. But everything that I tried didn't work, so I used a combination of my gadgets to take him out before finding Robin cuffed to a wheelchair. I ignored him at first, but the thought of having 2 birds handling all of my work intrigued me, so I tried rescuing him, only for his real owner to show up and claim him as his own. I really needed another sidekick, considering that Tim's work was getting sloppy, so I tried haggling with the jubilant gentleman, all while forgetting that I'd lost my fortune. Seeing that I wasted his time with empty bargains, the comical fellow returned the favor by wasting mine with a tutorial on how to discipline my workers. I was taking notes when Robin walked in and asked what was going on. Thankfully, the last 5 minutes took place in my head only, so I simply avoided my sidekick's questions and continued destroying people's careers. Next on my list was Jonathan, who'd locked himself inside a small theater. He aspired to be a singer since childhood, but due to a crippled economy, he spent the better part of his life as Thor's hammer. But after falling in love with Joker's vibe, he decided to make singing his whole personality, despite the fact that he sounded worse than The Weeknd on a weekday. Determined to also shred Jonathan's contract, I rewatched some footage to uncover the secret passcode of the front door, then walked right into a ticking time bomb as the charismatic boy had rigged the entire theater with explosives. I danced to his tune at first to convince him that I was scared, while my avian partner finally made himself useful and defused all the bombs from the room. However, during the performance, the artist fully embraced his Joker identity and donned a very chic vest. Jealous of his attire, Robin sneaked behind him and took him for himself, allowing me to shatter Jonathan's dream of becoming a singer. Getting better and better at crushing people's dreams, I wasted no time and went for the last artist, but the place was crowded with Harley's helpers, so I mimicked her voice to make them disperse and ease my job of knocking them out. I resumed my travels, but on the way I was tempted with another opportunity of buying my second Robin. Sadly, all I could do was watch the hysterical bloke threaten me that time was running out and the deal would expire. I wanted to extend the deadline, but the real Robin reminded me again that the bidding war was only going on in my head. I thanked him, then faced the last aspirant singer together. Alberto grew up in Hawaii, so it only made sense that he'd follow a career in Western music, which also allowed him to become a boxing connoisseur. Seeing that he was more inclined to fighting than singing, I tried knocking out the man on my own, but failed miserably. So I swallowed my pride and invited Robin to the dance, granting us a real chance of cancelling his artistic contract. After Alberto broke down into tears, we made our way back to the lobby when the sneaking suspicion of people guarding the entrance dawned on me. Thankfully, hiding in the grates confirmed it, but when I tried using the same voice changer trick as before, the clown princess herself decided to join the party. Moments later, Robin boldly revealed himself to the crowd, prompting Harley to open the gate and surround the poor bird. I was thinking that I really had to look for another sidekick, but then I realized that Robin was smarter than he seemed, as he gave me the perfect opportunity to knock the last wannabe artist out along with the remaining thugs. We were carrying the 2 failed singers back to their rooms when old Harold couldn't wait anymore and revealed himself to be the mastermind behind the massacre. Despite his lack of a beautiful voice, he also desired to become a singer, and what better way to do so than eliminating the competition, both figuratively and literally. But when I asked him to stop, I must have done so a little too melodious, because he looked at me in awe, saying that there could only be one true singer. After Harold did the unspeakable, Robin glanced at me and realized that the Joker's blood that was running inside of me gave me the perfect singing voice. He couldn't risk the world finding out about me, so he politely insisted that I lock myself up and entrust him to finish my mission of stopping Sackface. I had my doubts, but ultimately decided to give Robin a chance at redeeming himself. Not long before I got abandoned in my cell, the humoristic fella showed up for one final bargaining opportunity, but the joke was on me, as he revealed that Jason was never up for sale, pulling him out of the market for good in the process. Seeing that I was only daydreaming and I hadn't entered enter the cell yet, I decided to trade places with Robin, hoping that one day he'd understand that I didn't want to risk losing another avian pet. Seeing that Tim was safe and the mandatory side quest was over, I resumed my search for my copycat, beginning with another upgrade for the Batmobile that I'd never get to use. After upgrading the car, reports of earthquakes led me to the second island, where Ivy concluded that she had enough of the Arkham Knight's drones and began destroying them. Seeing that she was having a great time, I let her take out most of the tanks before swooping in and destroying the last one myself. Then I took out 5 more serpentine ones before going up to the plant to check in on Ivy. She was still partially naked, but that didn't matter as Alfred warned me that he'd finally found the Cloudburst device. However, the warning didn't help, as my copycat decided to bet it all on black and engulf the entire city into the blueberry banana mix. Luckily for Ivy and I, the blast didn't reach that high, but the same couldn't be said for the people on the streets, including my Batmobile. Seeing that the flavorless poison was slowly killing her plants, Ivy begged me to hurry up and destroy the device that was causing this. Having no other choice, I stuck to the subway railings to safely make my way back to Simon's airship to inquire about the possible fix to this mess. Once I was close enough, I grappled up to the ship, only to find another opportunity of teaching teenagers on how to take a beating. I finished with them, then tried going inside, but while I was away, Simon increased his security and all doors were upgraded to either fingerprint or vocal authentication. Sadly, this meant using the voice changer one more time, but I was even more saddened when I found Simon missing from his original cell. The fact that the room was again crawling with militia didn't help either, but I pressed on and gave each soldier a break before finding Simon inside the ventilation system. After a polite chat, he was kind enough to give me an upgrade for the car, allowing me to use it inside the blueberry banana smoke. Overjoyed by this gift, I hurried to my car only to face another obstacle soon after that required the hacking tool to overcome. Back on the subway railings, I used the height advantage to glide and get as close to the car as possible, before telling Alfred about the upgrade from Simon. He wasn't as pleased as I was, because he understood that in order to actually upgrade the car, I had to go inside the villainous smoke and fit it in personally. Seeing that I'd overlooked such a trivial matter, I plunged in anyway, along with my imaginary companion that refused to leave me. After I got to the Batmobile, fitting the new power cell went as swimmingly as an oil change, thanks to the continuous encouragement of my fictional body. Getting the car working again was crucial for Ivy, as I could search for more sleeping plants that would aid her in protecting the city. But seeing that I had to go deeper, I went to an abandoned train depot, hoping that I'd use their vehicle-only elevator to go underground. However, the depot was not even remotely abandoned, as unmanned tanks swarmed me the moment I'd entered it. Their myriad presence didn't stop me from destroying every one of them before opening the door and rushing through the tunnels, until a giant wall made me rethink my strategy. Apparently, this was a tunnel checkpoint, similar to the one from earlier, only this time there were no teenagers guarding it. Seeing that I was accompanied by drones only, I tried sneaking by for a couple of times, only to find myself torn to pieces every single time. So I used my trusty hacking tool to blind 2 of the tanks, then grapple up to the control room, enabling me to open one of the doors and use my own tank to destroy the rest. After clearing the checkpoint, I drove a few more feet until I found yet another obstacle. Luckily, this one involved just lowering a platform, and after I did, I continued through another tunnel only to find a harder iteration of the same obstacle. I got out of the car to inspect my surroundings, hoping that I could glide across the water, in spite of relying on my grapple gun. Sadly, that was not the case, as every time I got close enough to the other edge, the game automatically grappled me up. Seeing that this was too cheesy of a strat, I grappled up myself, then used the car's weight to balance the available ramp, locked it in place, then finally jumped across the water. As I kept on scouting the place, I remembered about the plants I was searching for. So I found another root, shook the ground to gently wake it up, and in return the giant plant put me back on the surface. Despite being thrown into an active combat zone, Ivy was generous enough to lend me a leaf and take out most of the drones herself. Destroying the last 2 tanks prompted the Arkham Knight to personally call and challenge me to a 1v1 on the starter island. This was my only chance of destroying the Cloudburst and ridding the city of the blueberry banana fumes. So I crossed the bridge, told Alfred to raise it so the copycat wouldn't escape, then engaged his security intel first before finally taking on the big one. Destroying the Knight's custom tank was very tricky, as I first had to creep around and hit it 4 different times to disable its shields, then go ham and hit it with everything I had while dodging everything that was being thrown at me. Eventually, the Arkham Knight surrendered, but seeing that his tank was about to blow up, I risked my life to save his, only to be thanked with another round of spin jutsu. As he was weakened by the explosion, I overpowered him with ease, but I didn't manage to subdue him because my unreal mate showed up and ruined everything. With the Cloudburst shut down, I FaceTimed Ivy to tell her the good news, but I got worried when she didn't pick up, urging me to rush to her location and see what she was up to. Her lack of HP concerned me, but that didn't matter to her, as in one last act of heroism, she gave her life to purge the entire blueberry banana mix from the atmosphere. After a heartfelt moment, she decomposed in my arms, joining her vegetal sisters in cleansing the city. Seeing that the air was now breathable again, I took advantage of it and went on a run to the police station, where an intern was struggling to decipher an encrypted message. I used my bad brain and cracked the encryption for him, which revealed a voicemail from Jimbo, who was getting closer to apprehending Sackface. police. I desperately wanted to join in on the fun, so I left the precinct and rushed to his coordinates, only to be faced with Bat's natural kryptonite: electrified water. For some reason, I was under the impression that Lucius had insulated my suit, but countless attempts of crossing the water proved the opposite. Thankfully, I'd already retrieved my shock-inducing gun from the precinct hours ago, but this meant using another gadget to continue the fight. With 2 electrical charges applied, I found Jim in a room full of young soldiers, but he taunted me again by displaying his elevator perks. Seeing that my conscience wouldn't let me jump out of the grates and greet the 16-year-olds, I tricked them into opening the door by using my copycat's voice, then relieved them of their duty with the help of the Batmobile. Still jealous of Jim being able to use lifts, I messed around with an electrical box, hoping to gain access to the elevator controls. Surprisingly, that never happened, as the electrical box controlled a few shutters that exposed a whole ventilator shaft. I took a moment to think through my predicament, then grappled to a room I'd opened using my tank, where I disabled the barriers from the entrance. Gaining full access to my car revealed the possibility of lowering it through the shaft, but I first had to find a way of stopping the spinning blades. Fortunately, one of the command rooms for the blades was above, so after easily gaining access to it, I overcharged the generator, making it explode, stopping the first set of blades. Lowering the car further revealed another breakable wall, which further revealed some enemies and the path towards the generator that controlled the second set of blades. Unfortunately, it involved powering up and down a couple of elevators, destroying another wall, fighting unsuspecting militia, before doing some meticulous parkour that led me into a room full of young soldiers. Dealing with them took a while, but I was successful in the end. Knowing that Jim was behind another breakable wall, I continued the search for the second generator that would allow my car to descend completely and clear the path to the commissioner. However, I found the sentry gun guarding the way forward, and after trying to sneak by it, I blinded it for a few seconds, then grappled up to destroy the second generator. With all the blades stopped, I lowered the car, destroyed the wall blocking my access, then opened the shutter door by breaking another electrical box. I quickly called Alfred to update him on the situation, then hopped back in the car to search the nearby tunnel system, until the Arkham Knight showed up with his brand new toy that obliterated mine. Thankfully, the game was kind enough to give me a second shot, allowing me to rage bait him enough time so that I'd corner him and destroy his drill. Sadly, the opposite happened, as he cornered me both physically and mentally when he called me by my government name. Feeling trapped, my only solution was getting out of the car, which meant leaving it behind to be torn to pieces by the angry copycat who knew too much. After the unavoidable annihilation of my beloved Batmobile, I mourned it for a few seconds, then grappled upwards, hoping that I'd either find Jim or a way out of the utility tunnels. Thankfully, the ventilation system I'd found soon after was underneath a group of soldiers guarding a special prisoner. I couldn't see who the prisoner was, so I popped out of the vents to take a closer look, but my huge bat ears must have spooked everybody there as they attacked me on sight. I've never refused the challenge, so I took them out, only to find Jimbo tied to a chair. Overjoyed by my discovery, I leaned in to break him free, but the Arkham Knight showed up with a gun pointed right between my bat eyes. Knowing that we'd played these games before, I patiently waited for him to stop complaining, but he did the unthinkable and revealed his real identity, shattering my grasp on reality. He was the Robin I previously tried buying, but when the same salesman showed up again, I figured that it was all another fictional auction. However, my assessment on the situation changed when I actually felt both his threats and the cold metal from his gun, so I discombobulated him and vanished, prompting him to take the high ground and survey his surroundings. I paused for a moment to analyze the best approach on taking him down for good, with my only real solution being sneaking around. Seeing that he couldn't check what was happening below him, I crept underneath his pillar, then grappled up for a takedown. Still perceiving him as my own son, I didn't have it in me to actually hit Jason, but my words worked perfectly fine, as after I offered my help, I damaged him psychologically instead of physically. Sadly, my words didn't hurt him enough the first time, so I had to inflict more mental anguish by adapting more or less the same stealthy approach. There were 3 additional vibe checks I had to pass, where the first 2 required taking out a few minions, grappling up to emotionally damage Jason, then successfully escaping from the room in under 30 seconds. The last one only had sentry guns that I needed to weave around, and after I did so, I grappled up and used 40 years of bottled up anger to smack him in the face, then stripped the knight's identity away from him, only to anger Jason further and thankfully survive the consequences. With Jason weakened by the fall, I could have ended it right then and there, but I instead offered my help again, which made him rethink his options. While he was making up his mind, I updated Alfred on the situation, but turning around to make the phone call gave Jason the opportunity to flee. Disappointed in his decision, I settled on looking at the bright side and celebrated the defeat of my copycat. Now that the Arkham Knight was no more, the game I was playing switched from Batman Arkham Knight to simply Batman. Knowing that I was still the protagonist of said game, I untied the commissioner in hopes of joining forces and stopping Scarecrow together. While we made our way to the exit, Jimbo got jump-scared by a soldier, which started another fight between the young militia and I. However, things escalated when I found out that there was a new type of youngster among the soldiers that required an electrical charge to defeat. Finding no other way of dealing with the guy, I shocked him, then beat him down in order to get to the elevator and go to Scarecrow. During our small talk, where Jim called me by my government name, it dawned on me that I was in a working elevator, which meant that the commissioner and I were finally friends again. After the lovely time spent together, Jim and I found Sackface on the roof, who was burning to ask the commissioner a very difficult question. Shoot Batman to save his daughter, or shoot me to save Barbara? Knowing that I was Batman and his daughter was in fact Barbara, his decision was impossible, but he ultimately gave in and shot me off the roof, hoping that Scarecrow would let his girl go. While I was falling to my demise, I wondered how it was that Jim's daughter was still alive, considering what I'd seen earlier. But that was about to become my reality again, as Sackface triple backstabbed Jimbo and threw Barbara off the building. Thankfully, bats are immune to bullets, which allowed me to catch her and drop her off to safety. However, we were not safe yet, as a myriad of tanks were deployed on our location, and my personal tank was still destroyed. Luckily, Lucius always had backup plans for his backup plans and made a spare car that was conveniently on its way to aid us. After taking out the tanks and safely storing my old partner in the passenger seat, we made our way to the police precinct, where Barbara could then use her hacking abilities to find Sackface. While she was trying to access her files from the clock tower, she noticed a few youngsters actively messing with our servers. Knowing that we couldn't find Scarecrow otherwise, I headed there, using the same parkour technique from before to gain a height advantage. After I arrived close to the tower, I noticed that the place was swarming with militia, so I began the janitor work with the snipers, then the medic, followed by the rest of the regular soldiers, leaving the big guy for last. With the servers now saved, I went back to the precinct to see if Oracle had made any progress in finding Sackface. But as I greeted her, Scarecrow FaceTimed us to boast about the ongoing assault on the police station, hoping to scare us. Tired of all the fighting, I asked Barbara to trade places, but she refused my request, implying that she couldn't fight without her suit. Seeing no flaw in her judgment, I reluctantly went outside, where two soldier squads pulled up to stop me. But things didn't go as planned for them, as I beat them all up, then looked for an alternative route that would lead me to the surface. However, I slightly miscalculated my route and ended up on top of the police station. The good part was that I could clearly see all the drones I needed to decommission, but the bad part was that my car was still underground. Thankfully, one of the tanks stuck the front door open, and after dealing with even more young soldiers, I powered up the secondary generators, opening all doors in the process. With access to my car and the front door opened, I went outside for the final Batmobile fight. Luckily for me, Barbara decided to help by hacking different drones and turning them against each other. Seeing that she was actually doing a good job, I decided to let her have all the fun and destroy most of the tanks, taking out the final two myself. But my job was not done yet, as more soldiers arrived onto the roof of the precinct. At this point, I was sick of fighting, so I tried leaving the fight, but to no avail, as every time I did so, Barbara got disintegrated. So I mustered all the strength I had left, grappled up, and dealt with two waves of 16-year-olds, using one electrical charge for the special brute. After finishing what I hoped to be my last battle, Barbara shared with me intel about Scarecrow's location. Apparently, Jim's voice was used to open the front door at the movie studios, and with nothing better to do, I went ahead to investigate. But once I got there, I remembered about the caged bird I'd left behind unprotected. With both Jim and Robin in his possession, Sackface had the upper hand, enabling him to blackmail and force me to surrender for their safety. My ego didn't want to do it, but my body kept on showing its age, and I knew that I had to surrender sooner or later. With that in mind, I went to the depot Sackface told me to, where he asked me to leave all of my gadgets behind. I gladly did so, then got inside a truck that was waiting for me, only to hear my imaginary friend yap for a few minutes before an unscripted crash made me relive a dark memory. I was thrown into a dark alley that seemed to have been empty, but after trying the nearby doors, a random drunk couple appeared on the pavement. Sadly, they were neither drunk nor random, as the game forcefully reminded me of my eternally sleeping parents. Thankfully, my fictional pal was there to help me through the tough times, or so I thought before he kicked me in the chest and sent a swarm of cheap knockoffs of himself to attack me. I kept on beating the daylights out of his clones before I realized that I had to perform 8 takedowns to catch the real Joker and do the unimaginable in order to end the nightmare. My twisted actions put a stop to the chaos, but my friend was still alive and decided to yap some more by giving me a speech about ethics and morality. Luckily, his speech was cut short, as 5 seconds later we arrived to the asylum, the place where everything had started. Sackface greeted me at the front door, then gave me the VIP treatment by tying me to a special chair. Then he reunited me with Jimbo and Robin in a room full of cameras and TVs. I didn't understand why he had such an overkill streamer setup, but it all made sense when he forced Jim to take out my mask and dox me on live television. Shocked by the reveal, Scarecrow seized the opportunity and injected me with a lethal dose of blueberry banana mix that altered my personality, allowing my imaginary friend and I to become one. However, he seemed to have been trapped by his allies, who were arguing on the best way of getting rid of him. But in their obliviousness, the comical fellow called for his car, which was a budget imitation of mine that allowed him to get the upper hand and clear the room of all the pesky thugs. Angered by his friend's betrayal, Joker took matters into his own hands by taking revenge on all apart from the little penguin. With Gotham now legally his, he cheered his victory until a dark shadow engulfed everything around him. But turning on the lights didn't help, as they revealed his empty funeral, followed by reporters who'd forgotten about him, then ultimately a graveyard filled with handsome stone sculptures. This was my way of telling the man to politely leave my brain, but he never got the clue, so I had to punch him into understanding. I then took him back to his favorite place, the containment facility of the asylum, where I had enough of him and used a takedown to lock Joker away for good. With the blueberry banana mix completely flushed out of my system, Sackface couldn't comprehend my immunity to the poison, so he gave me another dose that failed and urged him to rely on a simpler approach. Luckily, the motivational speech I gave Jason earlier made him rethink his life and saved me from the imminent danger. I then overpowered Scarecrow and gave him a taste of his own medicine that plunged him into his deepest fears, allowing Jimbo to go in for a final blow. Now that Jimbo and Robin were safe and Sackface got locked up, I called Alfred with the good news, but he completely shattered my confidence when he reminded me about the various side quests that needed my attention before I could have officially ended the night. However, that would become somebody else's problem, as my main goal of beating Batman Arkham Knight's main story while using as few gadgets as possible had been achieved. This challenge was easier than my previous one in terms of the amount of wiggle room I had when it came to using gadgets. Sadly, there were still moments I was forced to use some in order to keep the story going, but the total amount of gadgets used was still significantly low. Throughout the game, I kept track of a couple of bonus metrics, and interestingly enough, you'd need a minimum of 30 counters and 9 takedowns to beat the main story. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for similar future content. If you have any other games or challenges in mind, please mention them in the comment section below and I'll make sure to check them out. Thank you so much for watching. I was your host Luke, and until next time, God bless.